Hello and welcome back to our look at the digestive system. This is video 2 of a series of 4 videos that we will be looking at together. And this video, we are going to be focusing on the stomach and digestive enzymes and function that happens within the stomach. This first slide that we're going to spend a couple minutes on simply is looking at the various structural regions of the digestive system, and specifically the stomach. So you can see that our stomach here is really divided into 4 specific regions. We've got the cardiac region, which is right here, so called because it is directly inferior to the heart. And so here's the diaphragm. And if you were to come up into this area right here, there would be sitting the heart. And so the cardiac region is so named because of its relationship to the heart in the thoracic cavity. If we move to this area over here, this curved hump area, this is the fundus or the fundic region. And the fundus is an area of extra storage. All right, and this is typically where if you overeat, the stomach will expand and excess food will get kind of pushed up into this area to allow for digestion. When not overfilled with food, that fundus then becomes an area where gas will sometimes get trapped. And what will happen is, as gas gets trapped up into this area, if the diaphragm contracts, it pushes down on this fundus, and the gas that is there then gets pushed and comes up, and it gets forced out through the esophageal sphincter and comes up into the esophagus. And when that happens, you produce a burp. Right? And so again, gases are trapped here. That diaphragm contracts, pushes down on the fundus, pushes that gas up through the esophageal sphincter, and it comes up into the esophagus here. And that is what we define as being a burp. This area right here, this is, of course, the body of the stomach. Right? This is the main region of the stomach. And then right here, the stomach begins to narrow out to some degree. And it's this area right here that we define as being the pyloric region. Of course, this wide area over here, this is the greater curvature. This is where the greater omentum attaches to. Remember that the greater omentum is that fatty apron that hangs down over the small intestines. It provides an energy reserve, and it also reduces friction as the organs of the digestive system may or may not be rubbing up against the peritoneum. And then this area right here, this is the lesser curvature. And what comes up this way and attaches and comes up over the liver right here, this area here, this fatty area that you see, is the lesser omentum. That is there. And of course, lining the stomach, lining the inside of the stomach, here are these muscular ridges. And those muscular ridges are what we identify as being the rugae, or the gastric rugae. And this is what allows for expansion within the stomach. This picture here just kind of is just a little bit of a fun image, I guess you can say. This here represents a syndrome called Rapunzel syndrome. And what you're looking at, of course, this here is the vertebrae right in here that you're looking at. Your liver is coming in right here. This area over here would be the spleen. These here are the kidneys, at least the top of the kidneys or the adrenal glands right there. And this right here is the stomach. And what you are seeing inside of the stomach, this area right here, is actually a ball of hair. And so this is a syndrome where people chew on their hair and then eventually ends up swallowing the hair, and it's a hairball, for lack of a better term. This slide here is highlighting for us the various types of cells and their proximal location within the stomach. And so you can see that we've got ourselves 4 main types of cells that we need to be concerned with. We've got ourselves mucus cells. Right there, that is a horrible color. We have ourselves parietal cells, chief cells, and enteroendocrine cells, and of course their related functions that they do. So mucus cells, right? Mucus cells, which are closer to the lumen of the stomach, right? Secretes the mucus, and so these are the cells that are largely responsible for mucus production. As we head down deeper into the gastric pit, right, we see deeper down here we have parietal cells, which are located right here, and those parietal cells are going to secrete hydrochloric acid, intrinsic factor, which we know is key in the absorption of vitamin B12, and a hormone called ghrelin. Ghrelin is a hormone that basically induces hunger. It induces hunger, and so this is your hunger hormone. We also have chief cells, right? And the chief cells secrete an enzyme for protein digestion, which is pepsinogen. Right? And so you come down here a little bit deeper, right? And we can see that we've got the chief cells that are located again much deeper here. When the chief cells secrete pepsinogen, right, pepsinogen is an inactive form of the enzyme. In fact, the active form for pepsinogen is pepsin. Right, so pepsin is the active form of pepsinogen. And the way that pepsinogen becomes activated is the hydrochloric acid cleaves or shortens pepsinogen into a much shorter chain. And when that happens, you create pepsin. Now, pepsin is autocatalytic. And what we mean by that is it is self-regulatory. So pepsin can then go ahead and actually cleave pepsinogen to create more pepsin. So hydrochloric acid is used to initiate this process. And then once the level or the concentration of pepsin reaches a certain threshold, pepsin then becomes autocatalytic, meaning once again that it can cleave pepsinogen on its own to go ahead and create more pepsin. Pepsin is involved in the digestion of proteins. Right? So pepsin is the protein or the enzyme that is involved with the breakdown of proteins into amino acids. And the other thing that we see released or secreted from chief cells is gastric lipase. Gastric lipase would be the enzyme that is in charge of, once again, emulsification of fat. And so lingual lipase is now in the stomach. It's become activated due to the pH, and it works in conjunction with gastric lipase. All right. G cells, which are even deeper, G cells, which are even deeper, right on down here. G cells are also over here within the gastric glands that you see over here. All right. G cells secrete a hormone called gastrin. Gastrin helps to induce the muscular contraction that happens within the stomach. And so there's a process that is called peristalsis. Peristalsis. And this is a circular or wave motion of contraction. So that's this rolling wave of muscular contraction that happens through the stomach. And that is, again, that is regulated through gastrin. And so this slide here just kind of, again, breaks down for you these enzymes that we've already talked about on the previous slide. You can see we have pepsinogen. Once again, pepsinogen is cleaved into the active form of pepsin. And there's that term autocatalytic, which again means self-regulating. And so this is a self-regulating process. And again, we have gastric lipase and intrinsic factor. Once again, pepsinogen and gastric lipase are secreted from the Chief cells. Right? And intrinsic factor is being secreted from the parietal cells, which again are a little bit higher up within that gastric pit. This here is a summary table of the cells that we have talked about so far. Again, the mucus cells, which you will not need to be able to differentiate surface and neck mucus cells. Just know that they are all classified as mucus cells. But what do they secrete? They secrete mucus. And again, you can see here on this side what the function of those cells are. On this side, again, parietal cells, secretion of intrinsic factor and hydrochloric acid. And again, you can see, again, what the function is of that. A lot of you missed this one on the lab practical. Kills microbes in the food, denatures proteins, which a lot of you did get, and that was fine. Chief cells, again, secrete the pepsinogen. All right. Secretes the pepsinogen. So the hydrochloric acid is converting pepsinogen. The chief cells are secreting the pepsinogen. Again, G cells. All right. It's basically, again, regulating that peristalsis or that muscular contraction. That peristalsis is happening within the muscularis, and so that's what you've got going on there. And we know that pyloric sphincter is going to regulate what is coming in and out of the stomach. So on this slide here, this is again just going over what peristalsis is all about. And again, that is regulating the pacemaker, or regulating the cells that are within the muscularis to go ahead and be engaged in muscular contraction. And it's a wave of muscular contraction. It's that wave of muscular contraction. And so that's really what you need to be aware of for the stomach. When we come back, we're going to look at the function of the liver and the gallbladder, as well as the small intestines. And actually, why don't we do it now? I think we can handle that now. I've got about 5 minutes left on the timer to do this, so let's go ahead and tackle this one now. We know that the liver and the gallbladder work in conjunction to set up the small intestines for function. And the reason why we cover these two together is because remember that the gallbladder sits up within the liver, and actually it's the job of the gallbladder to concentrate the bile, and the bile is produced within the liver. And so these two guys here really kind of closely work with one another. And so the liver is making the bile. The liver is making the bile, and the gallbladder is concentrating it and storing it until it is needed. Bile is important in the emulsification of fat and the absorption of fat once we reach the small intestines. And so it's actually secreted within the duodenum of the small intestines. And so what you're seeing here is the pathway of production and activation for bile. And so this is one way to look at it, and this is another way of looking at it here. So the bile ductules, which are located within the lobes of the liver, right, carry the bile to the right and the left hepatic ducts, which then merge into the common duct, and the common duct kind of goes down to the cystic duct, all right, and from the cystic duct goes into the gallbladder, and that is the job. That is where that bile becomes active. Water is removed, and as water is removed, the bile becomes activated, and when you have a meal that is high in fat, the gallbladder will release the bile down the common bile duct, down into the pancreatic duct, and it's released within the sphincter of Oddi, or the hepatopancreatic duct, and it is secreted and released into the duodenum. And so we really pass through three structures. We start in the liver, move on down to the gallbladder, and then finally the bile will merge with the pancreatic duct to form the hepatopancreatic duct. And then from there, both the bile and pancreatic juice can be secreted into the duodenum. This here just kind of goes over a little bit of what the composition and the life cycle is for bile. All right, so again, we can see here bile is made up of cholesterol, has some fats in it, some phospholipids, bilirubin. Right? Bilirubin is the pigment that gives bile its color, and it's actually made, as we know from our look at the cardiovascular system, it's made from decomposed hemoglobin. Right. And bile salts. And bile salts are really just a form of steroids. Bile salts are composed or made from cholesterol. Right. And again, the function here is it aids in fat emulsification. So again, bilirubin we know is a byproduct of hemoglobin decomposition. Bile salts are a form of cholesterol. They're classified as steroids. Urobilinogen I think we've talked about this before. Urobilinogen is the breakdown of bilirubin. All right, and it's what is responsible for the brown color of feces. Right. And again, this is just how the bile flows into the gallbladder to become active. And this here is simply the anatomy of the liver and the gallbladder combined. Right? And so again, we have the right and the left hepatic ducts, which come and merge into the common hepatic duct. Right here is the cystic duct, and so that would then flow into the gallbladder here, where that bile is concentrated, come back through the cystic duct down into the common bile duct, where it merges into the pancreas. This here is the pancreatic duct, the common bile duct. They merge, and where they merge, they form the hepatopancreatic duct. Right, what we define as being, or another term for that is the hepatopancreatic ampulla. Ampulla because it opens up. And then this area right here would be the duodenum. And this over here is just an enlarged view of what is happening right there. And so you can see the common bile duct right here. You can see the pancreatic duct right here. And where those two ducts merge is the hepatopancreatic duct that you see right there. The actual physical opening into the duodenum is what we define as being the duodenal papilla. The duodenal papilla right there. All right. I also do want to mention that in the event that you have a meal that is low in fat and you do not need bile to go ahead and aid in the emulsification of fat for absorption, we can actually bypass the hepatopancreatic duct. And when we bypass this, we bypass it through this smaller little branch off of the pancreatic duct right here, which is referred to as the accessory duct. Right, so the accessory duct will basically secrete pancreatic juice only into the duodenum and bypasses the need to have bile mixed in to the duodenum. And so that is there as well. Keep in mind that the pancreatic juice, one of the things that the pancreatic juice does is it's high in bicarbonate. And since it is high in bicarbonate, it acts as a buffer. And it's buffering the acidity of the stomach acid that is being released through the pyloric sphincter. And so once we enter into this area, the bicarbonate ions that are found within the pancreatic juice helps to neutralize the acidity of the stomach, coming into the small intestines. Small intestines don't have a lot of mucus, and so therefore that tissue is a lot more susceptible to ulcers and scarring if that stomach acid was not neutralized. All right. By the way, I will also mention people that have had their gallbladder removed. One of the challenges of having that gallbladder removed is you no longer have bile that is effectively produced. And so what happens is that bile is never truly active or activated. So the liver's still producing it, no gallbladder to activate it. And so therefore, if you have a meal that is high in fat, it tends to be a lot more oily and loose as a stool. And that's often what is classified as a catch-all as being irritable bowel syndrome. And so that's one of the ways that irritable bowel syndrome can come about. And pancreatitis or pancreatic calcification. And so right here, this here is the pancreas that you're looking at right there. And those little white spots that you see are actually pancreatic stones. These are high levels of concentration of buildup of calcium within the pancreas, and it forms just like kidney stones or gallbladder stones. You can actually have pancreas stones that form, and that gets to be very, very painful. It does form pancreatitis, which is inflammation within the pancreas, and the pancreatic duct becomes blocked. And that can be a major medical emergency, as you have inflammation and swelling within the pancreas that can then lead to a rupturing of that pancreatic duct. Not a pleasant thing to have experience, but that is what you are seeing right there. You're actually seeing little pancreatic stones, calcified stones that are collecting within the ducts of the pancreas. And so now with that, I will go ahead and I think we will stop here for this and give you some time to digest, no pun intended, this material. And when we come back, we will take a look at the intestines, and once again kind of look at hormones that are regulating absorption of these nutrients. We're finally to that point of absorption. So I'll catch you on the flip side, and happy studying and reviewing.